so here for Coherence 2025. I'm speaking with Greg from RegenAI.Earth, and I'm bringing in Circletrust, which is one of my projects at this point in time. And I also work with Q1 Network, and I'm a co-steward with Coherence as well. So there's a few little connections there. I'm working with Bart in the AI subgroup to help build whatever it is that we're using for the Coherence MVP. Um, I guess I will speak with you again, Greg, like when we come and chat about that, the AI specifically to do with Coherence. But thank you for coming, and I'm really just wanting to hear more about your ethos and like what is driving Regen AI,
Sure.
and anything you can tell me, like what's on your horizon for the next few months or something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
Great. Um, so I've been at this in terms of Regen AI for since about January. We're into June now, so it's about 6 months, about half a year. Um, Regen AI is focused on kind of two main things. One is we're a regenerative AI development and venture studio. So what that means is development studio, that side of the house is partnering with other mission aligned, regenerative or regenerative adjacent kind of organizations to apply AI enabled development or sort of AI enabled technology in the spirit of regeneration. So helping to accelerate the regenerative movement and empower the regenerative movement through that kind of technology and design of products and services that leverage that. So
Mhm.
that's AI development, regenerative AI development. Ventures are, in-house, we have some ideas that we're working on ourselves, and just kind of, so we have this one prototype, for example, around urban food systems, and so that's a platform we've applied to a particular grant that I should find out about very soon, that would give us some money to help kind of get that really rolling in earnest. Right now we have a kind of a prototype built and a business plan and strategy kind of mapped out, but it's a bit on hold. But that's an example of a venture. So we imagine ourselves, putting ventures to market, and that there we might find partners and funders and that sort of thing. And those will be exemplary kind of regenerative businesses, with a core regenerative business model where it's not, we're sort of like rejecting typical VC, typical unicorn-based investment models, typical like 10x, 100x approaches, just completely rejecting all of that. Don't want to get involved in any
Mhm.
traditional kind of mainstream investor paradigms, but we would be trying to find partners that would want to support this regenerative work with a regenerative investment kind of approach. So that's the one side of the house is sort of regenerative AI development and venture creation. The other side is, maybe I'll just call it thought leadership, but basically it's sharing a vision and sharing ideas for AI and what it needs to be, and sort of like, there's a clear hypothesis that I'm holding, that we don't want to repeat the same kind of mistakes that we've made with earlier phases of technology evolution, like with social media, for example, where we neglected the systemic implications of social media. Like the companies were very focused on clicks and engagement, but often at the expense of mental health and social health and political health and, democratic health. And so there's really this kind of blindness to systemic implications of the technology, and there's this propensity to create narrow boundaries around metrics and what good looks like from the perspective of Facebook or you know
Mhm.
um, Twitter or whatever companies like that. So we see the same patterns emerging in AI right now. So recently, just maybe a few weeks ago, I published my ecological AI manifesto, and I've got some things that I'm trying to edit and refine and publish. There's a blueprint, ecological AI blueprint, that basically details like what is ecological AI a bit more concretely. The manifesto was kind of a vision document and sort of a theoretical framework, and the blueprint's a bit more practical. It's kind of like, and I can describe it to you verbally, but it's basically
Yeah.
what concretely could ecological AI look like if AI is sort of a commons infrastructure that's community owned and it's bioregional in nature, and it's leveraging agentic infrastructure. It's leveraging the sort of emerging AI infrastructure, but it's doing so in a way that's much more aligned with. In fact, it's an expression of nature, and it
Mm.
shifts culture, shifts governance, it shifts humans and how we relate to each other. And so there's this whole
Mm.
idea I have around sort of an ecological civilization. And maybe I'm rambling here, but just to say one more point,
No,
which
it's
I think
good.
the idea of one of the core ideas that I guess one of the main reasons I'm really investing in that side of the work is, as we know, we're sort of in a sense we're losing. The regenerative movement is fringe. It's like there's a few of us completely underfunded. We follow each other on LinkedIn, so it seems like we're loud and vocal, but really,
Yeah.
because I come from the business world, and really the dominant
Mm.
paradigm is winning, and it's moving us towards collapse. I see it as a kind of a terminal trajectory that we're on right now, with infinite economic growth and extraction. And so it's critical from a survival perspective that we turn it around. And I see AI as a potential for, it's kind of a moonshot. I call it humanity's moonshot, but basically a positive exponential that is sort of like a green swan. If you're familiar with that book, Green Swan, which is, I believe that if we can build AI in the right way, it's coming. I kind of feel like the cat's out of the bag, and like, is that the right expression? The cat's out of the
Yeah,
bag.
that's right.
And it's like,
Yeah.
it's like we can't really unwind. And so for me, it's like, well, what can we do with this technology? And I actually think there's a tremendous opportunity, but we have to do it grounded in the right set of principles. And we're not there in sort of dominant culture. And so we have to kind of build grassroots around, what I'm calling ecological AI. So that's a
Mm.
bit about what I've been thinking about lately.
Yeah, there's a lot to work with there. So one question that came to mind is how do you see people actually interacting with this AI? Like, is that something that you've been giving thought to within your company, or is that how you see other companies coming and interacting with yours, building things out for
Yeah.
engagement? Yeah.
Like, so, I mean, and then there's sort of like a near term framing on that, and then there's maybe a longer term framing. But so in the near term, because it's all just so emergent, I'm essentially just trying to experiment and learn and, apply, because these technologies are changing like week to week, month to month. And so really it's an experimental phase. I'm in a steep learning curve of like building agents and vibe coding and building technology, and because my
Mhm.
background's in service design, strategic design, product design, but not
Right.
necessarily in development. And so having access to those superpowers is like a whole new kind of
Mm.
thing for me. And I mean, it's not perfect because technology hallucinates and is weird and creates all kinds of weird results. And so learning how to wrangle, it's kind of like riding a horse in a rodeo. Like you have to wrangle the tech to kind of like get it to go in the right way. But in any case, so in the near term, it's really about experimentation. And I'm experimenting in different areas. Like I built some custom PTs. Like I built this one, which I would call like a relational AI. It's basically like a conversation partner, but it's called Current. It's in the GPT store, and it's a kind of a underneath the hood. The goal of it is to help people with a kind of a spiritual deepening, like a sort of a presencing and deepening, and it's designed very intentionally to sort of meet folks where they're at and work through dialogue. It works best in voice mode, like discussion mode versus typing,
Mhm.
but lots of people prefer to type, and it's kind of weird to talk to AI. So in any case, so that's one example like of an experiment, which is called Current. It's a relational AI, kind of a coach guide. And then the other experiments, right now we're working on this with a team, this ecological, this is more of an app platform that teaches people how to restore ecology. So if you have either, like, it could be at the scale of a garden, like an urban kind of more urban context or suburban kind of garden, where you want to turn lawn into food or pollinators, or grow biodiversity. So how do you do that? Or you could have a farm that's kind of underused, degraded land. The trees have all been chopped down, but you're not really using it for farming or industrial farming. It's like, how do you turn that into a thriving forest?
Mm.
So this is like ecological restoration. So this is one of the platforms that we're working on right now. So it's an experiment in the sense that we're learning a ton. Like it's not like we're treading over ground we already know. We're trying to learn how we do this, and we're working with an
Mm.
ecological restoration expert, like someone who's a real tree whisperer who knows soil and he knows
Yeah.
plants and he knows species and he knows biodiversity and he knows how you interpret a site and then which plants, which species you choose and don't choose. And so we're basically trying to put that kind of expertise in a bottle and leverage AI to as
Mm.
kind of like a chat bot, but with all these sources that it's referring to. Anyway, so that's another experiment. So the near
Right.
term is really experimenting and trying to build these like value apps and platforms. And then I'll pause there, but then I have a thought about more of a longer term unfolding of ecological AI more as a commons infrastructure and what that might look like.
Right. And is that an area that you started research on, or you've started connecting with people with?
I have, yeah, I'm working with, I've learned a lot from this gentleman named John Clippinger, who's an MIT,
Mm.
I don't know if he's retired, like Professor Emeritus. He's still very active. He's in the Northeast in the U.S. And he and I have had some conversations. He's a real technical kind of whiz, and so kind of bringing our ideas together, we've jammed out some. Well, he really helped me understand it, and then kind of meshed it in with ecological AI with my framework, and so that's sort of become the context for this blueprint. And so, yeah, maybe should I describe that briefly, how that works?
Sure. Yeah, I'd
So,
love
so
to.
basically, I mean, like, so the idea is that we move away from this kind of centralized, mega corporate, kind of centralized data and hardware infrastructure, like these giant server farms that eat up all the water and energy in a given region that everyone's kind of aware of. And we move to low impact, solar powered, small nodes that every community, even every like neighborhood within a city or every kind of small town might have like one or more nodes. And
Mm.
so there's a hardware component where, and the hardware is actually like not that expensive. Like it's getting, cheaper and cheaper to get these chips and machines. For like $50,000, you could buy some machines and set up one of these hardware infrastructures, and then you might need some solar panels and that sort of thing. But basically, for very little energy and water, because the scale of it is much smaller, you can build this localized infrastructure. So that's where the hardware infrastructure comes from. And then it's called a federated infrastructure because it's distributed. And then each of those nodes not only has their own hardware infrastructure, but then they have their own kind of agentic ecosystem that they manage that's localized. So in other words, every community, just like in bioregionalism, every community has different needs, different both from an ecological perspective, economic perspective, social perspective. And so the modalities of technology would change. Like if you're in a city, in a neighborhood in Australia, you'll have different needs in your community than I do in Canada, or than someone who's rural, living on a farm or whatever. So there would be like an agentic ecosystem, like an infrastructure of AI agents that would be
Mm.
localized. And those agents would be owned by the community, developed by the community. All the data would be sovereign to the community. And then there'd be these protocols for exchanging both agents and data with other communities. And so let's say there's a farmer in Brazil that develops, some kind of regenerative agriculture agent that the community is using in a place with a similar climate. I don't know, in Indonesia or whatever. They might take the Brazilian agent, through the kind of exchange protocol, remix it, modify it, adapt it, enhance it, improve it, and then share it back into the network. So there's this kind of open source. It's kind of like open sourcing this network of ecological AI agents. And so
Mm.
all these communities have access to these tools. The tools are, it's not like today where we all use these centralized tools, and they just kind of like suck up all of our data and use that data to train these massive models that are very much extractive in nature. Like those models are designed to extract our data, and they give us value, and that's why we use them, but they're not contributing to our community. But this infrastructure is specifically designed to um, enhance the local ecology, economy, and community well-being through these tools, and then through these protocols, we're sharing and exchanging this infrastructure with other communities. So there's a global distributed network of ecological AI infrastructure, and that, just a final thought, that not only does it empower communities with this technology, but it starts to change our institutions and our mindsets. This is where the exponential, positive exponential starts to come in. We start to think differently. How do we govern? How do we make decisions? How do we build businesses locally? How do we manage our resources? How do we grow our food? Where do we get our materials from? All of these decisions that today are extractive in nature and relying on this like centralized supply chain, global supply chain, all that becomes localized, and the technology helps enable that. And then we start to become almost like this ancient indigenous kind of mindset we become reoriented to nature, reoriented to the land, and we reshape our institutions to be in alignment with that. And it changes our mindset. And so this is where we start to become ecological in nature, in our culture.
So what does it take to get the existing paradigm into that model? Is that the work?
So like for me, the next step is to publish the blueprint, which is, it's like my challenge is, it's like because I'm also using AI to write these things, and they get pretty long pretty quick. So like the manifesto is like 20 plus pages, and it's very hard to get people
Yeah.
to actually read it. The blueprint's another, 20, 25 pages. There's a lot
I'll
of
definitely
content.
read it. Yeah.
What's
I'll
that?
definitely check it out. I'll definitely,
Yeah, yeah. I
I'm
mean, I
one
can
of those
even share.
people.
I can share you with the Google Doc draft, because what I'm struggling with is
Okay.
just editing, like just basically editing stuff is where I'm struggling.
Yeah.
Um, but the first step would be, there's kind of a core team that we would form that becomes kind of a backbone organization that it's almost um, what would you call it? Not a foundation, I don't know, like a backbone organization, a
Hmm.
not-profit, I suppose, that would be funded, and there would be a business model behind it, so it's like
Mm.
self-sustaining, and it would be
Yeah.
seeking regenerative investment, and then we'd be running pilots. So when I mentioned like we'd have these nodes, the way to start is we have to start building these nodes. So we have to start building, one node in one place, pilot it, work with the community,
Mm.
build also the agentic infrastructure, build a series of agents. Maybe there's some ecological agents, some food related ones, some governance related ones related to decision. I can show you the doc later because a lot of this is sort of detailed.
Yeah.
So we need to pilot. We need to start piloting, start one, two, three pilots. We need to grow funding. Then we need to like the goal is that then there's a movement, like people start to notice this, and that it's not centralized. It's other people start to do it, and they just start to build in their own communities. They start to build these nodes. Once we
Mm.
can kind of prove the model a little bit and provide kind of like a blueprint, then it's community based, and you don't need companies, you don't need OpenAI, or you don't need AI companies. You also don't need even federal governments to get involved. It can be
Mm.
community based. It helps to have the municipal, like local
Yeah.
governments involved in partnering, or local, because we need local funding and sponsorship and support. But it can basically, the idea is that it's a grassroots movement. It's like a bottom up kind of
Mm.
outside in sort of movement. We need to build this infrastructure, and then we need to develop that. Where the centralized
Right.
organization comes in is also in helping to figure out what the protocol is. Like how do these communities share with each other, and what are the rules around data, and what's the governance, and so then you need people to get involved in sort of shaping some of those decisions. And
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, because it sounds like you're imagining all these different agents being developed. So to me, that sounds like the creative part and the unknown. Like it opens up all these possibilities. But I think that's a place where people can take ownership and like feel invested. Um, And then I guess I just wonder, like, how would there be processes where people go into a creative space to figure out what needs to be built and developed?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's where the community,
Hmm.
governance would come into play. That and there's some roles. Like I can even share my screen if you want to like take a quick
Yeah,
peek at this
that'd be
doc.
great.
But okay, so hold on, let me. Then we can like we just like share some of these details. I haven't really. This I've barely spoken to anyone about. Like, 'cause
I
I
love it.
haven't shared. Okay.
Because I think that's where it can become popularized and sort of like rubber meets the road kind of experience where people buy in.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the draft. I'll zoom in just a titch. So we call this the Living Systems OS Infrastructure Blueprint for Ecological AI, uh, co-developed with John Clippinger.
Yeah.
So let's see here. So this I think I described a lot of this kind of high level kind of vision. Let's see if we can get into some of the details. It's community owned, agent marketplace. These are some of the, this is where John gave me a lot of these references. Like, I didn't know anything about any of these and don't really have a deep understanding, but this
Mm.
helped a lot just kind of shape working, collaborating with AI tools to write this. This helped create kind of the principles and the framework for it. So here's some scenarios. So there's an energy scenario. There's a food scenario here. There's kind of an urban restoration scenario. Here's the community owned. So here's the community owned infrastructure, what it looks like. Like I think of a combination between a community center and a small data center, affordable hardware.
Yeah.
So people have this kind of infrastructure, and then here's the agentic marketplace. So you have this is modeled on uh, sort of the open source like Linux open source software and operating system development. It's kind of building on that and applying that model to this kind of,
Hmm.
this is an open source infrastructure. So you can see how you have like agents that are developed in one place, adapted for somewhere else, and maybe, somewhere else, and then then it gets kind of reintegrated back into each other. So you have this kind of feedback loop of how the agents kind of evolve. Um,
Mm. I could see like for that type of process there, if you can guarantee the integrity of that, then people would see that as a reason to go with your organization as opposed to others who can't guarantee any kind of like process around that. Like if it's too exploitative or if it's just too ill-defined.
Yeah, there'd be so many
Mm.
questions around that. Like, but I think the idea is that I or the organization would be, again, in service to the commons. So we would be
Mm.
providing, almost like starting like blueprints that people could then, here's what the data center would need. Here's what you need to get started, essentially. But we wouldn't own people's tools or data. It would
Mm.
just be just like providing infrastructure to build on.
But I feel
Here's
that
the,
there's a chance. Sorry, I just feel that
oh,
there's a
you go.
chance.
No, please.
There's a chance that like having a standard around this is something that I don't see existing in many places. So the fact that you would have procedure and then a standard for what the agents would do and how they would interact and how people's information would be treated, like that's something that could be very values aligned and attractive.
Yeah, and that's where these protocols come in. So
Yeah.
the protocols is like how does the communication and adaptation work across the network? So you've got, there's agents speaking to each other. Like there's protocols for agents talking to agents, and then there's humans managing agents, and
Hmm.
it's imagining this kind of AI infrastructure where and again, like I don't necessarily desire this future because it's scary. But I feel like it's happening. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of like this wave is coming. So how do we
Mm.
direct this wave towards regeneration? That's essentially the question I'm kind of starting with here, as opposed to, because people might look at this and say, well, we need all these agents, and isn't it good enough to just have, like, I've had these critiques on LinkedIn, like with some of the stuff, like, we just need nature, we don't need AI, and I'm like, I
Mm.
agree. I wish we could go back in time to, 500 years ago, pre-colonial era, but like we're not there. Here, where are we now? And what's this? There's this momentum that's already been established. So how do we
Mm.
leverage that for regeneration? Anyway, so I'm just kind of flashing some language in front of you here, but there's all this kind of protocol infrastructure. So then there's each community that kind of engages, and then there's learnings that are exchanged, through different kinds of levels. That's the protocol aspect. Here's
Yeah.
the backbone organization, like kind of the shared infrastructure that gets created. There's different layers in terms of governance and engagement. Like there's like a community kind of layer, then there's a bioregional layer, and then there's a global kind of layer. I've been thinking lately about kind of governance. There's another thing that I was working on with someone else around. I think you might find this one interesting. They're called the Gaian Council, and it's this idea of
Oh,
like,
yeah.
where is it? Here? This idea of like, what could the United Nations be for the planet? And so it's this idea of like and again, I haven't. This is where I want to publish this, but I haven't edited it yet properly. So, but it's
Mm.
like an idea of each bioregion, each watershed has representatives. It's not like, rather than representing national interests, you represent bioregional interests, and everyone's interests are shared. And
Mm.
so, the current state with UN, you have typically it's national political and economic interests that each representative is there to represent their own country. And so nobody's representing Gaia, like nobody's representing, the ecological context. And so the Gaian Council, it could potentially augment, doesn't need to replace the UN, but it augments the UN. But it's focused on, where ecology is number one, like primacy around ecology and bioregional representation. And anyway, it's supporting the growth of the regenerative economy at a kind of a planetary scale. So anyway, this is sort of like the kind of stuff I'm thinking about. And
I love it.
I'm a little bit constrained because I'm also like doing some consulting to pay the bills. And so I'm not doing this full time.
Yeah.
So I sort of have a lot of stuff in my Google Docs that's like unpublished and half done and that sort of thing. But anyway,
Yeah, I feel you in that. So it's interesting. Like what would be the plan for that guy in cancel idea? Where would you imagine taking that, or you and your partner?
so the fellow that I jammed that out with, he's working with the UN right now, and he's got some relationships with like there's some countries in Asia, for example, where he knows like government and UN type officials. And so again, there it would be piloted. It would be like, get some funding to gather with one country or a couple countries to establish a kind of a Gaian council at a local scale. Ecological AI plays into it because the Gaian Council would leverage ecological AI infrastructure to support governance, decision making, like, because you still need data related to soil health and food and, transitioning to a regenerative economy. So you leverage the technology to help. So there's kind of a weave there. But yeah, the key thing to start with, these things just need to be piloted. So my dream is to be able to stop doing the consulting work I'm doing, which is, basically like paying the bills, and be able to find funding and investment to be able to just like get these pilots going, like build teams, help get this content out there, help get these pilots going. And, I feel like this work is important, and it feels like it's hard to get it going.
Yeah. Have you got any leads on that front yet with the financial piece?
Well, I mean, this is why I'm running like RegenAI as a AI development studio, and the ventures, and because that's where like initially my strategy was to apply for grants,
Hmm.
and I applied for a bunch of grants and none of them came through. like there's like
Mm.
the Google one. I applied for this like regenerative AI Google one, and there were like thousands of applicants, and it's just
Mm.
there's just I don't know. So grants I found unreliable. So it's like I needed a sustainable kind of business model. So I pivoted essentially into this like studio model. But even
Mm.
there, right now my core consulting is not in regenerative. I have like some lightly funded work in Regen AI, but my core consulting is in sort of service. It's in service design. It's in other
Mm.
stuff. So right now I'm just trying to bootstrap it essentially and build
Yeah.
out like projects for September, and but it's tough. Like the dream would be to find like some funder who's like, yeah, this is great work, and here's $1 million, and hire a team, and let's get this stuff published. Let's get these ideas out there. Let's get pilots running. That would be the dream.
Right. Okay, yeah. It sounds like you have some pretty high level connections already. So do you think it's just a matter of things clicking in?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm trusting the process. I'm trying to keep content flowing. Like this is why I published the manifesto and why I want to publish the blueprint, because I want to keep that like I've got to get the ideas out there in order to find people who might
Mm.
be interested in supporting it.
Mm.
It does no use. It serves no purpose if it's just on my Google Drive, with just me reading it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have strong funder
Mm.
relationships, funder networks. That I don't have, really.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because Q1 network that I'm involved in, we have like the inklings of some different types of funding there. Um, and a friend of mine from Circletrust is also developing a circulation fund with a range of bringing in other funders to partner with him. So, I mean, I can think about all those things and percolate them and see.
Yeah.
Um, like one thing that did come to mind, I'll just put in the chat, is say like this
Hmm.
nature tech collective. Have you come across these people before?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so what is your thoughts on how your creation would fit with say like these existing companies or even this type of alliance of like a group of companies?
I'm sure it would. I'm sure it would fit quite well. I mean, I've chatted with I think his name's Gilad, maybe, with one of the folks who's
Oh yeah.
coordinating there.
Mhm.
Um, that was a bit before my ideas were there was kind of earlier in the process. I'm sure that there would be, yeah, some
Mm.
good coherence here. I think one thing maybe that I would have to figure out is because I'm not necessarily proposing, so some of the venture stuff like the urban food one maybe would be a good fit for Nature Tech Collective, as far as I understand it.
Mm.
But this other stuff that's a bit more conceptual and a bit more like infrastructure oriented, I don't know if that fits their mandate in a way. It's not like a startup or a tech company, or it's like maybe I may be misinterpreting what some of the mandate might be there.
Mm.
But anyway, but I guess the short answer is I should look into it more.
Well, I feel that yeah, like a collective like that, whether it's them or another one, like they might be the type to say, yeah, we'd love to trial this. Like we're willing to use our existing networks and resources
Mm,
to do that. So that could be a way to have multiple pilots happening in different regions,
mm.
speed that up.
Yeah, yeah, they would be a
So,
great partner. There's so many, I think organizations in there that are piloting and building,
mm,
different sensor-based infrastructures, like different components that would be part of it,
mm, yeah. So
and they could probably
you need
direct me to
them to
the.
come on board maybe to like then it might be a matter of like presenting a model for how they would engage with it and bring
Mm,
their existing tools and alliances
yeah,
to feed into the protocols.
yeah,
Is that
yeah, that's a great idea.
yeah. Hmm.
I mean, right now I'm stalled a little bit because I've got these contracts kind of through the summer here, so like basically full time, working on some other stuff, which is great because
Yeah.
it's paying the bills for the family, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't have actually a ton of bandwidth. So even like taking meetings and I went
Mm-hmm.
through a period earlier in the year where I was just focused on for about 3 months, 4 months on RegenAI, and I was just like trying to figure out what I was doing. I was having a ton of calls and meetings like every day. That's kind of
Yeah.
how I got rolling. Was I opened up my Calendly link on LinkedIn and just said, whoever wants to talk, let's talk. And so I spoke to maybe like 70, 80 people, just a ton of people. But now I'm busy with this client work, and so I'm quite constrained. So I'm just kind of like in this period, this mode right now where I'm trying to be really, well, I just have to be really efficient with like in terms of the Regen AI stuff. What I'm hoping is again through the summer into September that I can open that up and open up
Hmm.
like at least a couple days a week to focus on it, if not more.
Yeah. It also brought to mind this LinkedIn post that I saw about um, electricity, like decentralized energy.
Mm.
And so I have had another couple of conversations around that recently as well. And I wonder if
Mm.
that might be an interesting partner, like if they're already thinking along those lines. Um, is that an avenue you've also looked at?
I'm familiar with Haifa DAO, but I haven't
Yeah,
seen
this
their
just
energy.
popped up. Yeah.
That's very cool. I'll have to look into this.
Mm.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of this recent stuff. I know that the DAO framework, the
Hmm.
Haifa DAO, like tool platform, but I hadn't seen any of their energy stuff, so I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, that was surprising when I saw that, but um, I think there might be a couple of people just starting to really think like that. And so, in terms of products and services that can match that thinking, um, there might be an emergence there. I guess the question that keeps coming up now, like thinking about all these partnerships and alliances that for you would be um, like what would you categorize as being Regen AI's like core offer? So if you did find someone who already had a decentralized energy network and you found someone like Nature Tech who already had sensor networks, like is it just the protocol or is there like something else that is really your unique offering to the mix?
Well, I mean, again, because so there's those two streams. There's just the the company which is self-sustaining in regenerative AI development and partnerships and ventures, and there's that work. And then there's this other work, which is kind of much more, you know, broader and it requires more like R&D. And so, I mean, in theory, studio work funds the studio work and the venture work funds the kind of more infrastructure side of it, but it's just that's a slow burn. Like because
Mm,
first I have to invest time and energy in, like, for example, I have a new website that I want to update. My Regen AI, like the website is like outdated, and so I want a new website, and I just need a few days to work on a website, but I haven't done that. So it's like there's just a lot of, I guess I just have a lot of bandwidth constraints. I mean, even to like build partnership networks and build you
mm,
know, alliances and like all of that.
yeah,
That's a job. It's like it's hard to do that side of desk, squeezing it in on weekends and evenings. And so this is where I'm still kind of like between
mm,
worlds a little bit. And yeah, it's sort of chicken and egg. It's a bit chicken and egg. But the notional plan is to fund that work through the business.
I see. And so would you have like AI development happening in-house, like, and that would be a development team, or would it be open source or like external contractors? How do you think that would work?
In the near term, like Regen AI, in the near term on the development studio side, it will be project based, and so I'll pull in people. I've got like an emerging, growing network of sort of AI, and I'm doing AI development, but I'm
Hmm.
not a professional developer, and so I would need tech, like to get things to like market readiness and launch, readiness. I could, I myself, and with some of my sort of closer collaborators, we can build prototypes and MVPs and kind of simpler interfaces. But to get to more robust, like market grade kind of technology, we would need professional developers for
Mm.
that. So that would come in from the network. And then, eventually, if we have a pipeline and we're busy and we're funded and there's a bunch of projects and partners, then I would love to have a team that's just working, because the team could then also be, working on different stuff too. And work, there could be, I imagine like
Mm.
there could be like a whole series of ventures. There could be three ventures that we're working on. We could have teams of, 4 or 5 people working on each. And then there could be like client work that's being delivered. There could be, 2, 3, 4 people working on different client projects. And then some of the more commons-based infrastructure stuff, you could have like a team of 3, 4 people working on that. But that's all. I mean, that's 20 people right there. So I'm pretty far from that right now. It's really just me and I've got some collaborators.
Yeah, understood. Yeah. Well, I feel like, do you mind if I spend a couple of minutes? I'll just give you some ideas about what I'm working on.
Please, yes, sorry. And I'm
Um,
sorry,
no,
Chrstine, I've been like totally just rambling.
I've been getting the download, so it's
Yeah,
good.
yeah. So I'm grateful and appreciative for your listening ears, and apologies that I've
No
picked up so much
worries.
bandwidth. Yeah,
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I've just been trying to think like, how do I approach this? Because it sounds like you have the bioregional context in mind. And I feel that that is a strong focus, and it also seems to be a growing awareness in terms of biofi, like bioregional funding as well. Is that something that you've explored as as well? Yeah.
yeah.
So
Like there's the Biofy.Earth organization, Semantic
yeah,
Power, some of those folks. Yeah,
yeah. So they have different funding streams going on there, and
yeah,
depending, I'm just trying to think if it's really a match, but it's kind of it's still the same kind of thinking. And so, yeah,
yeah,
that's one thing I'm noticing. Because Circletrust, that our project is trying to work within that bioregional context as well, because of seeing that people are valuing that and putting that forward, and it's a way of making sense out of so many other possibilities. So it's like a grounding factor, and I see a similar energy in what you're saying with ecological AI, where it's bringing a grounded approach to how we can build and why we would build, and the relationship of AI with the real, actual people and locations and Earth.
yeah, yeah.
So, um, yeah, so with Circle Trust, we're working on a framework that is like a set of standards. So maybe that's why I bring that idea up as well. Um, and we're very interested in people making values aligned choices and having a sense of value exchange that emerges from those values. So uh, we're emerging out of that community economy space and trying to take it further and looking for ways to integrate. Coherence has been really useful and interesting to think about all different ways to do that. For example, like I had a chat this morning with Joshua from RegenB, and he has a focus on business incubation and doing that in an ecosystemic way, or like pods of businesses or little clusters, rather than just investing business by business. And like that comes out of this other organization that he's partnered with. But basically, they're seeing that as it's a more dynamic way, and it's more
Mm,
abundant, and it creates different opportunities for those businesses in those little clusters
cool.
and what they're able to do. So, so we really love that. And one of our partners at Circle Trust, he has a similar kind of idea. It's called Pollinators for Change, and that's emerging out of Richmond, Virginia. But he's approaching it more on like this business sectors, like for regenerative change, like what are these sectors? How do they form together? Like how do you get leaders from those sectors to come together and start to create alliances essentially? Um, and so today we had Mike and Joshua meeting together and looking at possibilities of like
Mm,
that business incubation approach with the pollinators for change ideas and what they're already
Mm,
putting in motion. So I really like the sense of, like, say in
mm.
Coherence we can meet and join and look for the edges.
Cross-pollinate. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really possible, and I think it's happening. So yeah, I hope RegenAI can also find that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a
And
chat. I did
yeah.
have a chat. I had a chat with uh, Joggle, Thomas
Oh
from,
yeah.
do you know Thomas from Joggle?
I've seen their stuff mentioned. Yeah, I haven't actually spoken with him myself. So
Yeah, and so he actually shared a
mm,
lot of really interesting just
mm,
learnings from his journey and into development and funding, and so we talked about different finance models and for what he's working with and how to
mm,
manage. His approach is more like seed financing, so with investors, and whereas I'm trying to bootstrap, and so each one has its pros and cons.
mm,
Because with bootstrapping, it's I don't have to serve any investor objectives, especially if it's a traditional VC orientation. But I don't have the resources to hire and get things going. Whereas if you're seed funded or if angel funding from the get go, you have from an earlier stage, then you have the resources. You have to chase you burn through those pretty quick. So anyway, pros and cons. That's kind of what we talked about was
mm.
sort of learnings and pros and cons of different sort of funding mechanisms to get things rolling.
And what did you think about their platform as well, the Joggle platform?
We talked about it, but I haven't. He told me that they pivoted, and
Oh,
now it's taken a turn. But I didn't actually get to see the what they're building.
okay. Because I actually really liked what they were building, so I'll be curious to know how it's changed.
Yeah, I think that
Mm.
yeah, maybe I'll let him speak to it. But
I have to
but
hunt
yeah,
that
I
one
think
down. Yeah, because because something like that where it's like a information management portal or like a collaborative exchange portal. I wonder how that would fit with your ideas around local agentic development and that knowledge sharing type of experience for people.
yeah, I think it
Mm,
would, and I think that's where it's hard because
mm,
there's just so many good ideas out in the network, and it's kind of like the coherence word is a useful one because it's like sometimes, especially with entrepreneurial regenerative folks who are trying to like drive impact, sometimes there's very strong entrepreneurial orientations, and so it's hard to find like coherence, like this person has their project and I've got my project, and there's a lot of
mm,
overlap and a lot of, complementarity, but it's like what's the impetus to actually invest time working together, and how do we make that work? It's not always straightforward, so sometimes there's like first call and there's excitement, but what's the impetus to invest?
mm, mm,
It's Times it's not so straightforward, so I think that'll be interesting to see out of the coherence network, like some of the learnings there around,
yeah.
how do you make these conversations really, let's say, valuable in terms of activating the network and
Hmm.
meaningfully.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think of your brief description of your project, it's almost like it's a stack of different services and products and
Yeah,
experiences that you could outsource from these various places,
yeah,
or you could
yeah.
try to build the whole thing internally. So it makes, to me, some
You're
outsourcing
talking
might,
about the blueprint side of it.
yeah, so how it would work, like, yeah, everything that you just described.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
yeah. Yeah, that one is definitely like a stack. There's so many layers to it. It's more like an infrastructure, and it would need like a lot of different inputs.
mm.
Whereas on the other side, it's much more constrained experiments that are, tightly scoped and funded and budgeted and that sort of thing.
Yeah, like one thing I would say is that like a friend of mine is developing a gamification type app for bioregional, like people on-ramping into this concept, like people from, say, mainstream culture. How do
Mm,
you start to
mm,
make it relevant and to find resonance for them? And then they go deeper and they explore more things and discover more things. So
mm,
I wonder if that's the type of energy that your project needs as well. Maybe not that solution, but just that idea of like, where does it
mm.
start to find feelers and like and links.
Yeah, I
Um,
struggle. I do struggle with that.
mm,
Like I've been told a couple times recently in a way that I sort of come on too strong, like especially with folks who are in a bit more of a business as usual mindset. Like even today I was chatting with a friend and I
mm,
got kind of grumpy because like I started to feel myself getting grouchy because he was sort of like challenging. I mean, the comment specifically was around I said this to you around social media and this sort of lack of systemic um, awareness, which then led to a lot of systemic problems. And he's sort of like, well, what's your data on that? And I was like, well,
yeah.
it's like there's so like where do I even begin? So I get
Yeah.
grumpy in in the energy it requires to translate stuff that
Yeah.
for me just feels so obvious, and then it's like, okay, now I gotta like prove to you why social media has been damaging. Like after there's been like 20 years of data on that. And it's
Mm,
like I sort of like, okay, is this where the energy's going? So I got like grouchy, and then I actually I have to send him a text to apologize. But this is to your point. It's like,
yeah.
what's the storytelling, and how do we engage folks into that? And because if it's just for regen folks, then that's great, but
Mm,
that's only a very small sliver of global humanity. And I don't know whatever that percentage is. It's not huge, so it's got to be ways of engaging others into it. But
yeah.
yeah, that's a challenge.
Okay. Yeah. I think with Circletrust, we are taking that approach of financial um, capacity building for people that we're like, obviously that is a common thread for most people is wanting to manage their finances. And yeah, I guess I would like to talk with you more about that, but it looks like our time is like pretty much up for today. So
Yeah, yeah. On my end,
um
it's I gotta get my kid to bed here.
yeah.
But I do want to mention one person I met. Maybe you know him. He's in Australia. Kane Jackson. Have you come
No.
across him?
No.
He is also in this kind of financial equality, economic justice kind of domain, systems change in finance, and
Hmm.
he's doing this amazing. Um, Trying to remember the name of his organization is called Maslow.
Okay.
Yeah, so just look up Kane Jackson and check out his stuff. It's
How do you
really
spell Kane? Is it K or C?
with a K. Yeah,
I'll check it out.
yeah,
Um
he'd be he just did this crazy. I met him in Toronto. He did this like crazy tour of the world for like 2 months, like meeting systems change folks and growing his sort of concept and yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I have a sense that there's a chance for us to make an alliance, like multiple organizations, and put forward a request for funding through that approach where we're giving like a broader perspective and a bigger image for people to say yes to.
It's like the pod idea. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like coherence and like all of our connected people, we're already a pod. So
Yeah,
how
there's
do
many
we
pods.
sell that? Bring it forward. Yeah.
Okay, well, Christine, it's been great. I hope this is,
Hmm.
in the coherence context, useful
Yeah,
and interesting. And
definitely. Yeah.
thank you for tolerating my download mode.
I hope, can you send me that document? I would like to read it if
Sure. Yep.
still in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll invite you in as a commenter, and you can take a peek at. I can send you in to
Oh
those two
yeah.
documents I showed you tonight. Yeah, and you should
Yeah.
have a link maybe to the manifesto. That's on. I'll send you that as well, but that's on Substack.
Hmm.
That one I did manage to get published a few weeks ago.
Okay. Lovely.
Cool.
Great. Thanks, Greg. We'll
Thank you,
catch
and
you.
great to meet. And I look forward to the
Yeah,
next.
indeed.